When I first started working in Sweden, I genuinely thought people at work were talking about pancakes, riding bicycles, and randomly telling each other to forget this shit. And somehow, all of this was completely normal workplace language. One thing I've realized after living in Sweden for over 10 years is that language here often reveals something much deeper about the culture itself. So in this video, I want to share a few Swedish phrases and expressions that completely confused me at work, and what I slowly realized they actually say about Swedish culture and work life. One thing that surprised me immediately when I started working in Sweden was how everyone addressed each other. At work, people would just say du to managers, to senior people, to basically everyone. And what confused me wasn't that people sounded rude. Actually, they sounded very friendly when they said it. But for someone like me, who came from much more formal work environments, it still felt strangely uncomfortable at first. Because in many cultures, language automatically creates hierarchy and distance. So part of my brain kept thinking, am I really supposed to talk to my manager like this? And some of you actually mentioned something really interesting in the comments of my previous video. Du reformen. Back in the late 1960s, Sweden moved away from many formal titles in everyday communication. And honestly, I think that says a lot about Swedish culture, even today. Because respect here often feels less connected to titles and hierarchy, and more connected to behavior, competence, and how you treat people. You can sit with your manager, even the CEO, and still have a very normal conversation over coffee. And for many internationals, that can feel both refreshing and slightly confusing at the same time. Another phrase that completely confused me the first time I heard it was ute och cyklar. I remember discussing something with a colleague, and suddenly she said, kanske jag är helt ute och cyklar nu. I remember thinking, oh, that actually sounds nice. Going out, riding a bike, getting some fresh air. But based on her tone, I had a strong feeling it definitely did not mean something positive. Then I checked it afterwards. And yes, my initial thought was completely wrong. Ute och cyklar basically means you completely misunderstood something. And honestly, I think that phrase says something quite interesting about Swedish communication too. Because instead of directly saying, oh no, that's wrong, people often soften uncertainty or disagreement a little first. I think that's something I've noticed quite a lot in Sweden overall. Another phrase that confused me completely was det blev pannkaka of alltihop. Again, it came up during a work meeting, and once again, my brain focused entirely on the food part first. Because honestly, Swedish pancakes are pretty good, and I do them for my kids almost every weekend. So I remember thinking, why does everyone suddenly sound frustrated about pancakes? And eventually I realized it means something completely failed or fell apart. And honestly, I love how visual Swedish expressions can be sometimes. Because somehow you can almost picture the whole failed pancake situation in your head. And after a while, I slowly stopped translating the words literally and started understanding the feeling behind them instead. Another expression I found both funny and strangely brilliant was Killgissa. I actually understood the meaning surprisingly quickly, because we all know the type. Someone confidently explaining something, while clearly having absolutely no idea. What surprised me more was there's actually a special word for it. And apparently, the word became popular only fairly recently. I've even seen surveys discussing how much Swedish people Killgissa. And honestly, I think the popularity of that word says something interesting culturally too. Because Swedish communication often feels a bit more careful around certainty. People usually don't want to sound overly arrogant or pretend they know more than they actually do. So Killgissa almost feels like a social warning against sounding too confidently wrong. And I'm very curious actually, do people use this expression often at your workplace? And lastly, One expression that surprised me emotionally was 回一点. At first, I honestly thought, wow, people swear quite casually at work here. But over time, I realized it often carries a very different tone. I remember once I was overwhelmed with deadlines and starting to get sick. And while I was stressing out about unfinished work, my manager basically said, bara skit i det. Just forget it. Go home and rest. And strangely, even though the phrase sounded quite harsh literally, the feeling behind it was actually very human and understanding. And I think that reflects something I've noticed in Sweden overall. Sometimes people communicate quite directly, but emotionally, without a lot of drama around it. The words themselves can sound very plain, but underneath them, there is often care, trust, and understanding. And honestly, that took me a while to understand. And over time, these small moments are part of what makes living in another country interesting. Because sometimes you don't just learn a new language, you slowly start understanding a completely different way of thinking. And I think Swedish phrases often reveal much more about Swedish culture than people realize. Some of them confused me completely at first, but they also helped me understand Sweden a little bit better. So now I'm curious and would love to hear what Swedish words or phrases surprised or confused you the most.